and welcome to Coffee Break Blogging, where you'll learn to grow and monetize your blog in short, tactical installments you can use right away. Now here's the next episode in our series. Welcome back to another installment of Coffee Break Blogging, where this isn't just another podcast, it's a full course on building an online business based around your blog from scratch. My name again is David Risley, and if you want to catch up with us from the beginning, head on over to coffeebreakblogging.com to view the full archive of this show. Okay, so what we're about to do is part 4 of our conversion trigger series, where we've been talking about various psychological components that you could build into your offers, your emails, even your blog posts in order to move people into action. Now, if you want to catch up with us, it's the last 3 episodes here of the podcast where we've been talking all about these various conversion triggers. What we're going to do in this one is quickly wrap up 4 more, and this will actually wrap up this particular series on conversion triggers. Okay? So the first one I want to talk about is the sense of belonging or a sense of community that you could build up among your audience. Now, I talked in the last episode about social proof and how we use social proof in order to make it safe for our prospects to make a particular decision that we want them to make. Community, and that sense of community, is another very tightly related aspect of social proof. People like to feel like they belong to something great, perhaps even bigger than themselves. It makes them feel safe. It makes the things that they do have meaning. And these things are important. This is something that is built into most of us. As an example of this in terms of sales, and you'll see this a lot when it comes to after the sale, but I just recently bought a new RV, a new motorhome. And not literally brand new because that would be a colossal waste of money, but it's new to us. And we bought it at a well-known RV dealership called Lazy Days. Perhaps you've heard of it. Well, when I bought this RV at Lazy Days, the sales process had all this feel-good stuff built into it at the end, after we had already signed the paperwork and we were going through the process of closing on the new motorhome. But even during it, there's like, you get to where you know your sales guy, and there's these inside jokes, with the sales team, and they're sharing it with us. So you kind of feel like this sense of community with the guys at Lazy Days. Another part of the process after you bought the RV was that they have this section called the benefits, where after you've closed on the RV and you go and you talk to the insurance guy to get the new RV insured and all that, you get basically this bag of swag and all these different bonuses. They even handed out free t-shirts to my kids and my wife and I. Quite frankly, a shirt that I probably wouldn't even wear. But the whole idea of it is to make you feel good about the transaction, to make you feel like you are kind of an insider of Lazy Days, and make you feel like part of a Lazy Days family. And it's kind of like an onboarding process. They're trying to create a customer for life. So the next time I want an RV, I come back to Lazy Days. Okay? So how can you build that type of community, that sense of belonging, into what it is that you are doing in your business? How can you build that sense of loyalty by treating people like $1,000,000, giving them that inside scoop, so it makes them feel like an insider into your community? These things are important. A lot of it's going to come after the sale. It comes in very important if you're running a membership program, part of the onboarding process. But even part of your content marketing itself might be to let in, little inside jokes and things like, for example, Pat Flynn with the SPI podcast comes to mind. If you listen to Pat's podcast, every single episode of his show begins with some little nugget about him and his personality. And you get to where these little things, like he's into Back to the Future and that type of thing. These are things that bring that sense of community to his community. And it works out really well. It is, and it's definitely a conversion trigger, and I guarantee you he knows that. Okay. Another thing that comes to mind off of Pat is how he built a school over in Africa, and he mobilized the SPI community to raise funds for that. And I think he also doubled it. I don't remember if he built 1 school or 2 schools. But this goes to another very important point of building a sense of community, and that is, what do you stand for? What is your why? And when you can orient people behind these common goals, these things that show what it is that you stand for, that make you feel good about being part of that community, it really does help a lot. And Pat Flynn definitely did that when it came to building the schools over in Africa. Okay? So that's the idea of sense of community, a sense of belonging to something greater than yourself. Another conversion trigger I want to talk about here is current events, okay? And you see this and used quite often, but it comes on a very obvious fact, and that is that us human beings tend to have pretty short memories. We have, we tend to focus on what's right in front of us, and we tend not to see the long game in a lot of cases, okay? We tend to act on what is the most immediate versus those longer term trends. For example, if you're in the environmental movement, you probably get kind of frustrated that not enough is happening with the global warming movement. A lot of people don't think it's that big deal. And it's because you look and there's not really any difference, so how are you going to convince people that that's a real thing? So that's a pretty prime example of how people do concentrate on what's most immediate. I mean, if all of a sudden it became 130 degrees outside, all of a sudden everybody would be demanding action. Okay. All right. So what should become fairly obvious about that is that the media is very much what defines what the current events are, okay? And so you can actually tie your offer into current events by relating them, or even just taking something you observed about a current event and moving that somehow into your offer or your product. A really prime, obvious example of this would simply be holiday sales or Black Friday offers. Around Black Friday, there's a lot of people out there thinking about, hey, how can I spend my money today? And you'll see pretty much every business on the face of the earth doing Black Friday sales. That's an idea of having your marketing cover a conversion trigger, which in that case would be current events. You'd probably also couple that with the next one, which is scarcity. Okay? Scarcity, very, very obvious, very common. You see this. This is probably not new to you. It's the idea of using the fear of loss as a way to move people into action. The fear of losing out on something. That other people are going to get it and you're not going to get it because if you don't take action right now. That's the idea of scarcity and bringing urgency to the table. Going back all the way to the beginning about how we want to move toward pleasure and avoid pain. Well, if you then point at that pain and say, by the way, this pain is going to remain, or it's even going to be worse if you miss out on this, and this is going away by such and such a time, they're going to want to avoid that pain. And their way of avoiding that pain is to then take the action that you want them to take. Okay? So the most obvious way of employing scarcity is the good old-fashioned deadline. Okay? Deadline-based marketing works really well. And quite frankly, I would not recommend that you put any offer out there without some form of scarcity on it. Because without scarcity, the offer just kind of sits there and there's no real push for them to actually make that decision. At the end of the day, you want people to make a yes or no decision. Preferably, they would make the yes. But the important thing is that they make the decision and don't get stuck in a maybe. And sometimes you got to kick them in the butt a little bit to get them to make that decision. Even if the answer is no, it's better that they made that decision. And so deadlines are one of the most obvious and common ways of employing scarcity. Now, for a deadline or a scarcity-based offer to work, it must be true scarcity, okay? This cannot be something that seems all exclusive now and then later you kind of open it up to the world. That kind of crap isn't going to work very well because people are going to see right through it. It needs to be real scarcity, that when you say it's scarce or there's a limited quantity, you mean it and you back it up with actually doing that. I mean, to say I only have 100 copies of this ebook, I mean, that wouldn't be very believable. It's a freaking computer file, okay? So, when you employ scarcity, give a reason why. That goes back to one of the other conversion triggers we talked about, and back up why that scarcity is and why there's a limited quantity or why there's a deadline on that, okay? Now, you either can maintain that scarcity by, keeping it like consistent and not ever changing the terms. Or another way that you can do it is that if you intend for it to become more publicly available in the future, that you do it in phases. Instead of just saying, okay, it's exclusive, and then in a few weeks you open it up to the world. Instead of doing that, you do it in little phases, and then don't make a public spectacle out of it, okay? And then it can work, okay? Now, countdown timers are a really popular way to do this. I love countdown timers. You just got to make sure they're real countdown timers. I mean, if it's just some visual timer, but then it's still sitting there available to buy afterward, then you just lied to your audience, and they're not ever going to believe you ever again. Okay, so you need to have countdown timers that are actually real, not where they just clear their cookies in their browser and all of a sudden they just reset the timer. Okay, another thing you could do is having quantity remaining, where if you're going to sell a certain number of copies of something, then you can say how many are still available to be sold. Another form of scarcity I've used in the past is where it's an incremental price increases. So every time somebody buys it, the price goes up just a little bit automatically. And this can drive a lot of fast action on it. But there's a number of creative ways that you can employ scarcity, and I definitely recommend that you do. The last conversion trigger I want to talk to you about is the use of controversy. Okay? Now, you know what controversy is. It's used a lot these days, especially in politics and all this stuff. And quite frankly, so much so that you kind of write it off as just more bullcrap noise, okay? But that being said, when it comes to getting attention to your content, a little controversy can actually help sometimes. Now, too much controversy can actually alienate people, but just the right amount of controversy can actually draw people in. It kind of creates that information gap that we talked about earlier, where people want to just satisfy that curiosity. They're like, did he really just say that? Or what? You know, and they kind of want to like satisfy that curiosity. I mean, for giving an example off the top of my head, what if I, as the Blog Marketing Academy guy, came out and told you why having a blog is a stupid idea? Now, if I had that as a headline, why having blogs is a stupid idea, do you think that might cause a little bit of controversy in my space and get some people to click on that headline in order to satisfy that curiosity as to what I'm saying? You bet it would, okay? So that would be the idea of using controversy to drive activity, to create that sense of curiosity, that information gap. It can also drive word of mouth promotion, because sometimes you get that emotional reaction out of people and they will share that thing virally. For example, if you actually manage to anger a few people, which might go against your grain, but I've done it before. I did it in the technology market a few times, where I'd deliberately step into some like Mac versus PC thing, and I would just totally piss off the PC crowd by saying all the stuff about how PCs suck and Macs are so much better. I did that for the sole purpose of controversy. I mean, I'll admit that straight up, and it worked. I mean, it worked. I got a lot of commentary, a lot of people calling me names. It was good times. Good times. But this goes to that thing about having that right amount of controversy on the right topics can actually draw some viral activity and accelerate the effect of a piece of content. What it comes down to is the old thing about challenging what's called the 3 Bs. Challenge their behavior, their typical behaviors, challenge their beliefs, and challenge their belongings. You know, if you take those things that they just think, okay, well, that's just true, you know, like one of their beliefs, and then you come out with a blog post or something that totally disabuses them of that, then that would be the idea of challenging one of the 3 Bs. Okay. Now, when you're doing controversy, I would avoid the big sensitive topics. Like, I wouldn't get into politics unless that happens to be your market. I probably wouldn't get into race, and I wouldn't get into religion. I would just kind of leave those 3 alone. You don't want to bring too much bad controversy. We're talking about stuff that's kind of designed to make a point. It's kind of like Derek Halpern with Social Triggers, and he came out and had a blog post, I think, about content isn't king, because everybody says content is king. It's just that kind of thing, that kind of controversy can work, okay? It's a matter of how far you take it and what you do with it, okay? Now, this does work best for content marketing. This is a great way to get content noticed, to get your free content out in front of a whole new set of eyeballs. But the whole idea there would be that you have a call to action on that blog post, okay? And then that moves them into the next phase. Okay, so that kind of wraps up all of our conversion triggers. It doesn't mean that these are the only things that matter, but this what I've given you in these last 4 podcasts represents a lot of what salespeople and copywriters and that type of stuff have in their mind, and they build into how they orchestrate the sales message. But it even goes into getting people to open emails, to click on emails, to do pretty much anything that you want them to do. And so when we look at what our purpose is here with content marketing, the purpose is to drive people to take action. Now, when you can do that with our content and do it with these conversion triggers in mind, you are going to get higher conversion rates. You are going to get more people to open your emails. You're going to get more people to click. You're going to get more people to opt in. And yes, you're going to get more people to buy things from you. That is why these conversion triggers are so important. You really need to understand how the human mind ticks and what makes people do what they do. Okay? So those are the conversion triggers real quick: sense of belonging in a community, the use of current events, the use of scarcity, and then lastly, the proper use of controversy. Okay? With that being said, hopefully you found this episode and the last 3 in this 4-part series of conversion triggers useful. Hopefully, maybe if you want to grab the transcripts, print them out, and maybe make a little list of these things. And if that helps you out as far as future reference, then I would highly encourage you to do so. And of course, you can head on over to coffeebreakblogging.com to view the archives. But of course, every single episode of this podcast, if you're not already aware, is transcribed. Okay, so you can go to any episode of this show over at coffeebreakblogging.com, which will simply forward over to Blog Marketing Academy, and you can grab the transcript of any of these episodes and have that available to you. Okay, thanks for listening. I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Coffee Break Blogging. If you like what you heard here today, we have something awesome we'd love to send you. It's called the Blog Conversion Guide, and it has 9 tweaks you can make to your blog in order to increase your conversion rate to get more opt-ins and sales. As one of our listeners, we'd love to give you access to this guide absolutely free. You can get your copy right now by going to coffeebreakblogging.com. Again, go to coffeebreakblogging.com to get your copy, and we'll see you next time.